In this video segment, we're going to take a look at some of the defaults that are currently in place in the TIES gradebook that are up and running and ready for you to use at the start of the school year. In previous years, you've had to go in and manually add grading scales, set up your categories, and change some of the preferences in order to get your gradebook ready to enter assignments. Well, over the past year, we've been working with TIES to have a lot of that already set up ahead of time so you can spend more of your time actually setting up your individual assignments and not having to go through a lot of that additional setup. So first of all, let's take a look at the grading scales that will be set up in place for you. To check those out, you'll go to Setup, choose Assign Grading Scales, and next to one of your courses, you can select an action, and I'm going to use mathematics here as an example, and I'll choose Assign Scale. And you'll notice that every kid is already assigned a current grading scale, and it's called the school default. And by default, every one of your classes and every one of your students will already have that school default assigned to them. So you really don't even need to go into that area, but if you just want to double check and see, make sure that it is really there, you can go to Setup and choose that assigned scale. And if you actually want to see what that looks like, what the individual settings are behind the scenes, you can go back to Setup and choose Define Grading Scales, and then just to the right of that school default, you can choose Edit Grading Scale. And here's where you can see the lower limits that have been set up for you ahead of time. And you'll notice that you cannot edit those. So those grading scale lower limits are actually locked in place, and so we all will be using a consistent grading scale based off of the 4-point grading scale that the 4-point system that shows up on the report card as well. And so that is sort of the first real default that's set up for every teacher that is using the TIES gradebook for next year. The other area that we have things preloaded is under the setup area, and this time we're going to go to the category editor. And when I click on that, we have preloaded formative and summative categories for every one of your courses, and the weighting is set to 80-20. However, if you want to make some modifications to that 80-20, you can certainly do that. Remember, the minimum for a summative has to be 80, but if you wanted to increase it to a 90%, or to a weight of 90 rather, you can click on that, change that to 90. I'll change my formative to 10 and go ahead and click Save. And so you can do that and make those tweaks to the individual category weights if you need to do that. If you just want to leave the 80-20 as it is, you really won't need to do a thing. You can just go ahead and start entering assignments in your gradebook, and those options will be available to you when you create your assignments. But when you log in your gradebook, on the left hand side, when you click on an individual course, you will go ahead and see those individual category weights set up ahead of time. The other default that's set up, this time under Setup, we'll choose Preferences, and we'll go down here, and there are really two things to pay attention to on this particular screen. The first one is making sure that scores are rounded to the nearest whole number. Because this interacts with the report card, when you submit grades, we want to make sure that whole numbers are submitted to the report card. So we're talking about the 4, 3, 2, 1 that is defined on the report card. We want to make sure that these grades calculate whole numbers as well. So that is set up for everybody and will be in place for next school year. And the final thing on this page is down here in this grade calculation, there's a checkbox here, and it's grayed out just so you don't change that. It's a locked down preference, and it really allows you to do rubric grading and use some scalar weighting options. And we're going to talk about that in a little more detail in an upcoming video segment that'll be posted on the TIES Gradebook Moodle. So you can go there and listen to that and get more details on it. But if you want to read some more detailed documentation, there is a link here you can click, and it'll open up a PDF file, and you can get additional information about how the scores are actually being calculated if you're interested in reading some more detailed information on that. So those are the three really kind of main areas. We have the grading scales, the categories, and there are a few preferences that are now in place for you. So really, the gradebook is set up, and from day one, you don't have to do any of those additional setups. You can just go ahead and directly start creating your individual assignments. And so that's what the next video segment will be about. Thank you.